Welcome. This is going to be an astrological compatibility video, and this time between Gemini and Cancer, or Cancer and Gemini, whichever suits you better. Now, so what I want to say is I have not seen a lot of like Cancer Sun and Gemini Sun relationships, like romantic relationships that lasted. Um, but there's and they're within 1 degree, one sign of each other, which is a big no-no in astrology. It's not that it won't work, but it unless you have a lot of other elements in there to counterbalance each other, it's not likely to work, similar to um, Cancer and Leo, and or likewise Gemini and Taurus. Now, that being said, I've seen a fair amount of, like, say you've got someone with a Cancer sun and the other person has a Gemini moon, or not moon, Gemini rising, or you have a Gemini sun with someone with a Cancer Venus or something like that. There actually can be a fair amount of compatibility in there, but the energies are still interesting. So you have Cancer, who's ruled by the moon and who rules the fourth house of mother home and is kind of the kitchen of the house. And Gemini is ruler of the third house. Is that the third house? Yeah, the third house, which is, I liken it to the dining room. And so you're not that far off from the kitchen. And it typically has to deal with small local travels, siblings, and also to do with the nuclear family. And so you can have a lot of shared compatibilities in that way, especially when it comes to the want for a family. Now, that being said, Gemini and Cancer typically have a fair amount of philosophical differences and ideological differences as to what democracy means and well, I mean, Gemini is ruled by Mercury and is it's an air sign, and it's the least mature of the air signs. It doesn't mean you're immature. It's just in the order of things, the least mature of them. And Gemini can be very strong-willed, whereas Cancerians can be strong-willed, but in a dynamic with a Cancer and a Gemini, they are typically they're more likely to put their feelings backseat, and because Gemini being the least mature of the air signs, especially in unevolved energy, they're not likely to be intuitive. So you're not likely to be intuitive enough for a Cancer. It doesn't mean you're not intuitive, and with other signs and placements you're likely very intuitive. But with a Cancerian, you're likely not to be aware even that you are not intuitive or empathetic enough for a Cancerian. And Cancerians, you're likely to put a much higher priority on intuition and emotional nature than a Gemini. And you both have really good reasons for being where you are in the feeling versus the thinking. And so it's not that either of you are wrong or that your needs aren't valid. They're just often very incompatible. And Gemini being ruled by Mercury and being of the third house is very much to do with a lot of movement, a lot of changeability, and it's a sign of the twins. So there's a lot of inconsistency and also a great amount of adaptability and flexibility in there. So there could be a lot of strengths in that way, especially once you get into evolved Gemini energy, because you could actually adapt in ways that a Cancer really loves and needs, which is, I think, why, like, Cancer Sun, Gemini Rising kind of thing, or likewise even Gemini Sun and Cancer Rising can work fairly well together. You can both be adaptable for each other in ways that you might not with others. Um, but there's also a certain amount of inflexibility in that too, is that a Cancerian is much more of a homebody that really needs and appreciates the security of routine and sticking to one thing, whereas Gemini, I mean, it's a wonderful kind of childlike energy in that ability to just change in the moment, to just go where the wind carries you. And whereas I've seen a fair amount of, like, Cancer and Gemini can really appreciate each other's needs for one thing or another, but that doesn't necessarily mean that romantically it's going to be enough. It's kind of one of those, like, you almost dream of each other in a way, but it doesn't work on a practical level. And it really depends too on what other elements in there. I mean, Cancerians are typically they're much it's funny because they're the earthiest of the water signs, so they're much more likely to be focused on career and like, are the bills paid? Do we have stability in the home and things like that? And much more likely to panic if it is not there. Whereas Gemini is much more likely to be focused on, do I have enough stimulation? Is it fun? Am I enjoying myself? Am I stuck? I don't want to be stuck in routine. Geminis typically hate being stuck in a routine. Ironically, even though they typically have a routine of changeability. So like they're consistent in their inconsistencies. And Cancers likewise also being ruled by the moon and being so changeable emotional wise, you also have that consistent inconsistency, but it's in a different way. Um, Now it's another one of those relationships, and I'm noticing this as a pattern, especially with Cancerians, but it's also a pattern with Geminians in that it's not that it can't work, but there's got to be a lot of other elements in there to really bring balance to it. And also, I mean, so as a Cancerian, you're going to have to be very, very comfortable with socialite Gemini's need to have a lot of different stimulation, and that includes romantically. It doesn't mean that they're going to be disloyal, but they probably seek the stimulation from a lot of different sources, whereas you often require or you want a partner who mostly seeks that from you. And and likewise, Gemini, you're going to have to learn to be comfortable, one, with not always being right, and two, with a Cancerian's need to prioritize family a lot more. And even, well, I mean, it depends. And I have Gemini rising myself, so it's kind of a weird dichotomy to think about a lot of this, but it's Gemini typically has the quality, especially being the youngest of the air signs, of like you see patterns and you love learning and knowledge and bringing things in, but that can oftentimes get very egoic and become a you can almost like you do know a lot and you do have a fair amount of experience and you do see things in ways, especially from others, that they're not seeing, but seeing yourself can be a little bit more of a challenge until you're older. And really seeing the way that you are with others, especially a Cancerian, can, I mean, if you're really putting effort into that and it doesn't make you uncomfortable, then you can have a really strong relationship with a Cancer, especially if you really learn to value their emotional side. Like they really need space held for them in that emotional side. You can't be with a Cancerian and be like, "Oh, stop being a crybaby about it." Like, no, that's not going to work. That's a good way to ruin a relationship with a Cancerian. And likewise, as a Cancer, you're going to really need to recognize that a Gemini typically, I was going to say they don't mean it, but they do mean it. They just don't typically have that emotional IQ that you are going to find a lot more appealing, especially in a long-term relationship. As a short-term relationship, you two would probably find you have a good time until either the Cancer feels far too put upon, especially in a financial sense, or the Gemini feels bored, or if either one of you have insecurities creep in. It's kind of similar to where Cancer and Virgo can kind of increase each other's neuroticism. Cancer and Gemini can typically increase each other's insecurities and immaturities. So, I'm gonna go ahead and leave that there. If you have different experiences or you have specific questions, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.